the gala to be, if you'd asked me this a couple years ago, you would have seen a look on my face, a no-show gala. And we had a fantastic auction. We had an incredible happy hour. And at the end of the year, we ended up concluding with 2 matching annual fund raises. The first that was met within 7 days. And I believe the second one is very close to closing. So all in all, in a dismal year, in any year, in an incredible year, we had some very incredible highlights and successes. So thank you all. I'd like to acknowledge our corporate sponsors on the next slide. Thank you. Our corporate sponsors on our next slide. You can see that we've got a tremendous support from the corporate community, and we hope to continue engaging with them and growing that base, despite all that's going on. So you can see, I won't read them off. We would be here for 45 minutes, and that's a good problem to have. All right, so without much further ado, I'd like to introduce Carl Reedy, and he will give us a care center overview. Carl, what's going on?
Hey, Walter, good to see you, man. Thank you. Before we go into the CF Cares and the outreach activities, I want to raise something in case you haven't seen it yet from the advocacy side. So yesterday or early today, the foundation sent out an email and have been hitting all social media about an advocacy alert to ask our members to support the COVID relief bill with a couple of provisions specifically for our CF population. So if you haven't received it yet, probably the simplest thing is to either go on the CFF website or to go on act.cff.org. The information will be on there for those of you who've done it before. It's pretty straightforward. All the information's there. You put in your name and they in turn put out the members. You hit submit, and in my instance, Gerald Connolly and Warner and Kane receive that action alert and that support from us. So if you haven't done it yet, I know Katie's done it. I know Chad's done it. Okay. Judy's done it, but let's be sure we get as close to 100% participation as possible. Thanks. So now let's go to the actual part of the agenda. As all of you know, 2 of the 3 pillars of the foundation strategic plan are care and community. The last, of course, the third is cure. But our care centers advance the quality of care as we know, and when partnering with our chapters, we succeed in advancing those critically important goals. As the board's outreach chair, I've had the privilege of working with Kirsten to improve our relationship with both Fairfax INOVA and Children's Hospital. How? By supporting their priorities and in turn developing a strong collegial and positive working relationship. Tonight, you'll have the opportunity to hear presentations from both Dr. Brown, the director of the Adult Care Center and Lung Transplant Center at Fairfax INOVA, and Dr. Kay, who's the Pulmonary Division Chief and Director of the Cystic Fibrosis Center at Children's National Medical Center. Let me take a minute and introduce Dr. Brown before she takes us through her presentation. Dr. Ann, known as Whitney Brown, has been with the INOVA program since 2010, after 3 years as a fellow at UNC Hospital Systems, training in pulmonary and critical care. In 2017, underneath her leadership, the center was certified by the foundation and has grown from 52 patients to over 110 currently. I've had the honor, actually, to come to know Dr. Brown really well over the last several years. She was helpful in giving me quite a bit of guidance when Chad, frankly, wasn't very well about lung transplants. As a member of the Patient Family Advisory Board, I've been able to witness firsthand her active and tireless leadership, the high quality of the care center team, and the commitment they all have to quality care. I'm not sure if many parents of adult children get to really see the workings of a care center anymore as their adults go, without us now. I've had the opportunity to learn so much and have such respect for the work that they do for us. While I could go on, let me ask Dr. Brown to update all of us on the center. Dr. Brown?
Thank you, Carl. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up? Okay. Carl, that's a very generous introduction, and I would say the pleasure's been ours to have Carl join our team and really work tirelessly, to help us achieve our goals at INOVA, despite not having a direct connection with our center. But I think I think we've worked together well, and we've benefited greatly from Carl's work with us over time. So we look forward to more of that. So this is an update where I'm going to talk first about our adult program, and then Dr. Asefa, who is the director of our pediatric program, he is in the car driving, but I told him he's tuning in and he can chime in for any updates, but I told him I would present their slides as well. So this is just a Venn diagram that I made to conceptualize what I thought were kind of the tenets, the four major domains of care that we need to be focusing on for CF care in 2020 and 2021. Next slide. So I just wanted to look back at 2020 a little bit for our adult program. And these are our numbers over time. And as Carl pointed out, the adult program got certified. I think we had our site visit from the CF Foundation at the end of 2016. And so we got our official letter 2017. And at that time, we had around 50 patients. And we had seen up until last year really tremendous growth year after year. And we thought, oh my gosh, how can this continue? Last year was more even from the year before. So 2019 to 2020, I guess not unexpectedly, people didn't move into the area as much, didn't seek new care. If transitions from the pediatric program were perhaps a little delayed because of the uncertainty of the situation. But I would say overall, our numbers held steady in 2020. And we've already had, I think, in 2021, we've already had a few new patients coming to us. And so I think our last update is 119 adult patients. And you can see in the front in blue is patients that are enrolled into the Port CF or the National CF Registry. And in the red is total patients that we have seen during the year. And so we're very proud that our proportion of patients that agree to, they have to sign consent to be entered into the registry so that we can capture their data, send it to the CF Foundation so they can kind of get a real feel for what's happening around the country and where to invest their resources. You can see that we probably have about 95% participation, which is great. Next slide. And this is the overall breakout of our patients. This was, I think I put this together around Thanksgiving, of our 113 patients at the time. Because we are also a lung transplant center, we do get a lot of more advanced lung disease patients, as well as we continue to closely follow the patients who have undergone lung transplant at our institution or have moved into the area and had been previously transplanted elsewhere. So you can see a little under 2/3 of our patients would be what we would call a standard CF population, that they're not, they do not have advanced lung disease and they have not had a transplant. And then we have about 22% that have advanced lung disease and 16% who have undergone lung transplantation. And we feel really proud of the fact that we take care of patients all along the spectrum of disease, from totally normal or better than normal lung function to those who have needed a transplant or may need a transplant in the next 5 years. Next slide. This was a slide that we put together as a team looking at what we were proud of for 2020. And I think quality improvement is kind of the overarching theme here. And we have a really active quality improvement team. And it was actually really helpful during the pandemic to continue to meet weekly with our quality improvement team. And it was usually virtual meetings, but it helped us maintain some normalcy and some focus during crazy times, so that we felt like, we were making some progress in our lives and that we were a little grounded. So this, I don't want to read out everything exhaustively, but we continue to make progress on some of the projects that we had set out to do. And so really our theme of 2019 had been communication. And so that carried over into the middle of 2020. where we wanted to make sure that we were communicating information to our CF community on a regular basis. And so we twice a year, we mail out a hard copy newsletter of what's happening with our program. We had 4 webinars last year that we stood up pretty quickly about COVID-19 and all the uncertainty. We provided our 3rd annual North American CF Conference sort of webinar or takeaway points from our team to our patient community. And then we created hospital admission folders that were tailored for people with CF when they came into the hospital, so that they would get not just the general packet of info, but things that were more pertinent to their care. And I'm extremely proud, as is Carl, of our work with the Patient Family Advisory Board that we started, gosh, really just 19, 20 months ago. And we meet consistently every month. And again, very important during the pandemic to remain very consistent and steady with our attendance, which we did. And we really focused on education and presented educational programs to departments all around the hospital to try to educate them about cystic fibrosis, some of the nuances of care, because it is a huge hospital and there are so many nurses and doctors that not everybody is an expert. So, and one thing that we were really effective with is a co-presentation model where I would present, or one of the other staff members would present, and we'd be paired up with a patient. So there would be that patient story that would really grab people's attention. So that was very effective. We had to, as all around the country, but also us, we had to pivot to telemedicine really quickly. And I think we had our first telemedicine visits. We'd really done none before last April, and early in April last year, we figured out Zoom and we launched into telemedicine, which I think is here to stay. And I think at our center is gonna probably be, we'll continue to offer it and sort of maybe think about a pattern where every other visit might be in person versus telemed. And it's frankly allowed us to follow patients who may have moved out of the area or maybe temporarily out of the area. So that's been, I think, one silver lining. We've had really broad use of Trikafta, which is fantastic. I think the last registry search that we did, we had 93 eligible patients for Trikafta, 69 of which were on drug. And remember, we have a post-transplant population. So some of those patients that are not on drug or after lung transplant and we've discussed it and they've decided not to for one reason or the other. We had a record low number of hospital admissions last year, and which continues this year. And we feel that that's a reflection of the impact of Trikafta, and then of course the good infection control that social distancing has provided. Something we're really proud of is we created a food pantry in the middle of the pandemic. Erin, who is who was our dietitian, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We recognize that with COVID, with the financial stressors, that people were becoming more food insecure. And so we have a food pantry that we're running with physical groceries out of our clinic. And now we've actually gotten some grocery store gift cards as well. So we can help people reduce their stress about affording groceries or accessing groceries and continue to focus on their care. And then lastly, by funding through the CF Foundation, which was nationwide to every center, for mental health programming, we have been able to launch mental health programs this year in a virtual platform, which have included, we had 2 seminars, one on resilience, one on channeling anxiety in a positive way. And then we had a mindful movement yoga seminar, and now we have started a small group sort of discussion series for patients for people who are interested. So we've been very fortunate with that. Next slide. Goals for this year. We are really just trying to figure out how to proceed, what's the best way to proceed with a mix of telemedicine and in-person visits, because we recognize the value of telemedicine. And then we used to huddle as a group physically, like get in a room and talk about who was coming to clinic that day. And we have revamped our, what we call pre-clinic huddles. So we make sure that we all are on the same page and streamlining and optimizing care. But now we're gonna, actually we're starting a new format on Wednesday to try to streamline that as well. We had begun holding regional quarterly, what we called CF Journal Club meetings, and actually the CF Foundation and Kirsten and the Metro D.C. chapter had provided dinner and a spot for us to meet at the CF Foundation physical location in Bethesda. And now we figured out we can do that virtually, and we expanded it to Hopkins, and now we're calling it not the DC, Metro DC CF Journal Club, but the DMV CF Journal Club. And that's where the care teams can meet together and have a speaker and article to discuss and advance our care. Continued growth of the food pantry is something that we hope to see. We hope to more and more utilization of our mental health programs. And we do have a physical therapy grant. We're in year 2 out of 3 from the CF Foundation that has been sadly underutilized because people are not coming to the hospital. But this allows for every person with CF to be screened by an excellent physical therapist once a year for physical issues that may be related to CF, chronic coughing, years of strain on the body, to see if any additional treatments are recommended. So we're trying to adapt that to a telehealth format. We're trying to morph that into also designing home-based exercise programs. So more to come on that. Next slide. And lastly, I just wanted to update, we've had not too much change in staff members, but Erin Lopinski, who was our dietitian for the last 2.5 years, is so successful with her private practice that she left at the end of last month to pursue full-time private practice. We were lucky to recruit Shannon, who is coming to us from INOVA Mount Vernon Hospital. And I think she starts at the end of this month to fill Erin's shoes, and she'll be trained by Erin to make sure it's seamless. We submitted an application to the CF Foundation for the LEAP grant, which is basically a leadership and education program for advanced practitioners, which is like nurse practitioners or physician assistants, to bring in more what we call mid-level care into the clinics, and to help the physicians by seeing some patients in clinic and developing expertise. And Meg Fergoso is one of our nurse practitioners who does primarily lung transplant, but really wants to learn more and develop a practice in CF along the whole disease spectrum. So we're waiting to hear about that. And then lastly, Dr. Anju Singhal is joining us. She's our advanced lung disease fellow this year, but she's gonna be our associate director of the adult CF program starting this summer. And I think she's on the call. Anju, do you wanna raise your hand if you're?
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet
you. If you're there. So we're thrilled to have Dr. Singhal joining us. Next slide. Okay, so Dr. Asefa is, and maybe other members of the our pediatric cohort are on the call as well, but to be seamless, I'll present on their behalf. Next slide. So these are the pediatric care team members. The physicians are on the top, and then the other staff members on the bottom. And of course, they're supported heavily by an office full of support staff, nurses, and 2 Spanish translators. Next slide. And these are their statistics, just looking at their numbers from 2019 to 2020. And I think that they, like we did on the adult side, had pretty stable numbers, not a lot of change in movement between the 2 years. Next slide. And this is some of their activities in 2020 through present that they wanted to highlight. So Dr. Danye Asefa is now the pediatric program director, and he took over from Dr. Jim Clayton, who many of you know very well. And Dr. Clayton is still around, but he is working more on a reduced schedule. And so you can still see him, but he's trying to strike a good balance and really do a lot of self-care these days, which is fantastic. Their respiratory therapist, Candace, did relocate with her family to Florida. She's married to someone in the military, so they relocated, and they're looking for a new respiratory therapist. And their goals align with ours a lot, which is streamlining transition to adult care. They're in the unique position where they cover all the newborn screening for our area, and they've really tried to streamline that and run it through Patty, their nurse practitioner, and really focus on communication with both the families and the pediatricians. We've added an additional day of sweat testing. They're working on their clinic flow. They're screening all their patients for research opportunities, and they are working with us on food insecurity. And we are extending our food pantry to all the pediatric patients as well. Next slide. And their goals are to hire a replacement respiratory therapist. They had been working on a quality improvement project to improve the lung function of their population. And part of that was just to make sure it was accurately being captured with good spirometry in clinic. And they continue to look at that as well. And then really, the theme of food insecurity and not just referring their at-risk patients and families to our food pantry, but to also, state and local resources. And then to smoothly transition their young people with CF over to our program is a priority as well. I think that's it. Oh, this is just a plug. We're going to offer a vaccine webinar. We don't have the magic vaccine appointment that everybody really wants, including us, for everyone, but we do want to talk about the vaccine for our adults and anyone who's interested. So this is a time that we've set, and we will create a Zoom invitation, send it to Kirsten to disseminate. So you don't have to be with our program to tune in if you want to just hear some general questions about the vaccines and sort of where things are in Northern Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Now let me briefly introduce Dr. K. As I mentioned at the outset, he's the Pulmonary Division Chief and Director of the CF Center at Children's Hospital Center. He maintains a strong interest in several research areas, including lung mechanics and abnormalities, and he is the recipient of numerous awards. Dr. K, if I can, I must mention that you are the second Dr. K my wife and I have come to know, and Chad for that matter. The first was the late Dr. Lucas Kulczynski, also known as Dr. K. He diagnosed our son Chad with CF back in the early 80s, and we credit him for our son's health in those early years. I'm confident that the families and patients and children have the same respect and confidence in you and your team. Before the presentation, I'd like to give a shout out to Carol Jays, your social worker at the center. I've been on numerous virtual CF calls with her and a number of the families in your community. She is loved by everyone. The calls have had a very positive impact on the community and has helped us at the chapter build a strong relationship with Children's and the CF Center. In fact, as I ask you to update us, I want to congratulate you and the center for the 2020 National Partnership Award you received from the foundation for exactly this expanded virtual collaboration during this pandemic. And by expanded, we mean every other Tuesday in English and every other Thursday in Spanish. When we first started it, I was quite skeptical, but thanks to Carol's energy, it continues, and it's an incredible commitment. So on that, Dr. K, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for this very, very nice introduction. Now I'm frantically trying to find other superlatives to describe Carol because she deserves them. But I'd like first to introduce to all of you our center. Next slide, please. So the center, the CF Center at Children's National is actually one of the oldest centers, not just in the area, but in the country. And it has continued, for several decades now, taking care of the patients. And some of our staff, many of you may know, especially Dr. Cheney, has taken care of not only of patients who are adults, but has seen the kids now, and so it's a multi-generational, endeavor. The other different things about our center is that it is the combined center both for pediatrics and adults. Children's National is the Department of Pediatrics for the George Washington University. However, we are an independent hospital and we're physically located a few miles away from the GW hospital. So our patients actually remain, especially for the outpatient visits, within Children's National. We have been very fortunate to have a group of adult pulmonologists from the neighboring Washington Hospital Center who trained, and they have shown over the years a great interest in taking care of CF. So the patients, although they are being transitioned to the adult care, at the same time, it's being done in a very gentle, if you wish, way, because the physical surroundings for the outpatient visits remain the same. A number of key people, including Carol, remain, available to them. And that actually has worked very nicely both for the center. It's not like it happens a lot of times in other places that you say, okay, you are 18 or 20 or whatever year old, I cannot take care of you anymore. Here is an address, of somebody to go and see. People, are used to see the adult physicians even when they are children, and then when it is time for them to transition, it's not an unknown environment. The inpatient care is separate. The pediatric care is being, of course, at Children's, and the adult inpatient service is at Washington Hospital Center, where we have set up the system on how the patients are being evaluated, admitted, the protocols and everything else, so there is a seamless transition. The nice thing about it is that the inpatient admissions actually are way down. So it is not exactly that all of a sudden there were many people crowding the Washington Hospital Center. These days, even before COVID, the patients, a lot of them prefer to receive their care at home. Their insurance companies wanted them to receive their care at home, so it has worked actually quite well. We have a very large team of physicians, both pediatric and adult. We have 7 fellows who are in the pediatric fellowship pulmonary program, and for them CF is a very significant part of their training. And the adult fellows also come with the patient clinics with their attendings, so they are going to be ready wherever they end up going after graduation. They are going to be very well trained. We have also very strong collaborations, especially actually they are adjunct members of our center. We have Dr. Han, who is an infectious disease specialist, who essentially is devoting her entire time is clinical and research related to CF, and I'm going to talk about her a little more. And also we have Dr. Bryn Marks, who's an endocrinologist, who also trained specifically and did research with CF patients. And when she joined the endocrinology division at Children's, she started immediately, being a major force for the care of the patients with diabetes. Next slide, please. So the top graphs show the blue one is the pediatric population broken down in different age groups. We have, a small number of new patients every year. We have a bigger one in the toddler to early childhood, and the vast majority are in the school age to teenage years. The adult data that are in the orange graph, they are almost mirror image from the opposite way, that the majority of the patients are in the 18 to 29 year age range. Then about a quarter of them are about 30 to 40 years, and we have a sizable and increasing population of patients who are over 40-year-olds, and the hope is that the next few years there is going to be a different trend, especially in the adult population. The catchment area is a very interesting one, although as you can see we are officially the center for the District of Columbia. It's the only center in the District of Columbia. And the district is a relatively small, both geographical and population-wise area. However, our patients come actually as far as Pennsylvania pretty much, or Hagerstown, and southern Maryland. So there is, and definitely Montgomery County. So there is a very diverse population that we are seeing. Next slide, please. And this is actually something that is really very special about our center. Most people, both patients, parents, the general public, and even physicians, always consider cystic fibrosis a patient of white people. I mean, a disease of white people. And that was and still is true to a very large extent. However, our center actually is very different. As you can see in the top graph, we have broken down the patients by ethnic and racial background. And our center actually is half and half. About half of the patients are Caucasians, and the other half are Hispanic and Black. And this is a result of the multinational composition of Washington, D.C. But it has changed actually a lot of things in the way we practice medicine and in the way we even think about cystic fibrosis, because people from different countries and different ethnic and racial backgrounds have a lot of times very different mutations than the typical mutations that we see in the Caucasian population. And that is affecting both the presentation of the illness. They may do or not do things exactly the same way that we were used to. And also these days with the new medications that are targeting specific mutations, it has become a big problem because there are apparently a lot of people in the world who do not carry the mutations that the research has targeted up to this point. So it has opened up a new frontier trying to fill this gap between the actual need and the advances in medicine. The bottom graphs, and again, I'm not going to bother you with all the details, but we have broken down some of the main indicators, the FEV1 for the lung function and the body mass index for the growth. As you all know, these are two of the main parameters that the foundation and every center are targeting, and we consider as major indicators of how well the patients are doing. And I'm very happy to say that, both the pediatric and the adult patients, the vast majority of them are actually, these are percent of the patients. So the vast majority, up to 80% of the patients, have FEV1, that is normal, and a small percentage has moderate severity disease, and only a small group of people have advanced lung disease. And the same thing happens to the adult population. The interesting thing is that although, these days you hear from everybody, about diversity and disparities in healthcare, and, clearly all of these things are real. But I am actually very proud of our center, because if you can see, actually, it's very hard to find any group that is predominantly better than the other one. Which I interpret actually that if a center provides good care, this is actually what is bridging even the disparities that exist outside the center and outside the hospital. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we have solved all of these problems at Children's and, this is the paradise for everybody, but clearly it shows that if we follow what we are supposed to do, even people who come from a disadvantaged environment can have the same good outcomes, with people who were more fortunate, at least in terms of the socioeconomic background. Next slide, please. This is a pretty busy slide, and again, don't worry, I'm not going to get in detail with all of these things. What I wanted to show with this slide is that our center is much, much more than another clinical care center. Something that a lot of times people do not even know about it. Children's National has actually one of the top 5 research institutes in the country. And we have actually about 800 scientists, in addition to an equal number of clinicians who work, and they are faculty at Children's. And there is a lot of research that is being done, both specific to CF. For example, recently, the past year, we participated in some of the most common studies, the clinical trials that are sponsored by the industry. However, we do have our own research within Children's. We're starting now a new study targeting patients with CF and diabetes. Dr. Han has her own laboratory, and she's studying the effect of the antibiotics and the resistance and how they affect the bacterial population, both in the gut and in the lungs. And this is innovative research. We had more than 15 publications in this area just last year. And we have some innovative research for new therapies, not to treat CF, but primarily to treat infections that are very predominant in patients with CF population. And one of the biggest advances this past year is that our hospital got approval to start a pediatric lung transplant center. We recruited Dr. Tsifansky, who was running one of the biggest centers in Florida. And we are moving into that direction. And this is actually kind of a, you know, I have always very mixed feelings because, I mean, I started my career doing transplants, and then for a number of years, you know, I did not, and now I'm starting again. And it's kind of a schizophrenic situation in the sense that part of our work is to make sure that nobody will ever need to have a transplant. I mean, this is actually our goal for CF patients and for anybody else. At the same time, we are realistic that no matter what we do, sometimes the various diseases, you know, are stronger than we are, and we need to have a plan B for the patients who fail the treatments that we offer in the beginning. So we have the infrastructure, we have the expertise, and we hope that you know, within the next few months, we're going to be fully operational. We are actually cooperating very closely with our adult colleagues at INOVA. So there is going to be a lot of cross-pollination between all the centers, and the patients are not going to have just one option. And especially, you know, as they grow older, even if we start the evaluation on the pediatric side, by the time they may need the transplant, you know, they are adults and they have to go to the adult hospital. So the cooperation exists and is going to advance even more in the future. The other area of work that is exciting is the advanced lung disease program, which again is not only for CF patients, but patients who have advanced lung disease need a lot of care, even if they are going to end up with a transplant. They need to have a lot of care to prepare them for the transplant. Dr. Brown mentioned in her program, and we're going to do, and we are doing the same thing, focusing on the nutrition, focusing on the pulmonary rehabilitation, focusing on mobilizing the patients as they are moving towards the transplant, because this is really what makes a lot of times the difference between success and failure in a transplant patient. Putting the organ in is the easy part. Keeping it in is the difficult part. And we evaluate the patients, and we started already putting them in regimens that they are going to keep them in as good physical shape as possible. And if they happen to get better in the meantime, that's great. Nobody's going to be disappointed if somebody is well enough and they don't need the transplant anymore. So we work in a two-pronged approach covering all of these possibilities. The final thing, and we are going back now full circle to Carol. Carol Chase has been instrumental both for our center and for the foundation through the chapter in community outreach. They have been phenomenal. And, the Spanish population, especially, that was feeling always neglected, and, they were feeling, people literally and metaphorically do not speak my language, why should I participate on this, on that? All of a sudden, they realize that now, there are people who can help me. And they have actually done a tremendous job with the help of the chapter, especially with the minority population. Carol specifically has been also instrumental in a number of activities within the foundation, mentoring other social workers and so forth. And she's having also another very good group of people she works with, especially our psychologist, Casey Lawless, who trained in CF, and now she's a faculty at Children's Hospital, and her primary responsibility is CF mental health, and of course our physical therapy team and our nutritional team. And next slide, please, and I'm finishing. And these are the goals for this current year. None of these circles is one that I would say this is the important one. And the reason for that is that each one of them is affecting positively or negatively the other four. So if we don't work on all 5 of them at the same time, nothing is going to work. So we try, to focus on all of these areas. Thankfully, as I said, we have a fairly large team of people, so they can concentrate in this area. And hopefully next year, I will be able to tell you more about the diagnostics and the therapies that may come up from these activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. K, for an incredibly informative presentation. Thanks again, Dr. Brown. And now we're going to go to that annual part of our agenda, which we enjoy every year, which is the award. So I'm going to turn it over to Ella Cooper and Michael Gallagher, who are the two newest members of our board, to run us through the awards tonight. Ella and Michael, you're up.
Thanks, Carl. I appreciate the introduction. My name is Ella Cooper, and we're going to start with the volunteer awards tonight. So our first award goes to someone who's special to this foundation, especially because she doesn't necessarily have like a connection herself. When she was faced with the uncertainty of 2020, she made the decision to press forward with traditional fundraising, but also to host numerous bake sales, all of which sold out in just a few hours. Her dedication and passion for the fight are just a few reasons why we are so happy to be presenting this year's Hero of Hope Award to Liz Zander.
Congratulations, Liz. Up next is the Gifts for a Cure Award. And apologies in advance if we butcher anyone's names while we're going through these. So for many years, the Tagle family and Baker Tilly have devoted their efforts to fighting for a cure through Brewer's Ball. As close friends of the O'Leary family, the Tagles have jumped right into our mission to fight for Casey and all people with CF. They are the definition of tried and true supporters who are fighting until we see a cure for 100% of people with CF. We are thrilled to honor Tom and Raina Rose Tagle, as well as Baker Tilly, with this year's Gifts for a Cure Award.
Congrats. The next award we're going to be giving is the Tomorrow's Leader Award, which is given to a young professional whose philanthropic in nature possesses a desire to grow both personally and professionally, and is dedicated to advocating for the foundation and its supporters. Will one day make CF stand for Cure Found. To find an individual like this, you will look no further than to our very own Laura Singer. Laura does not have a direct connection to CF, but has been a supporter for many years, starting with her work as VP of Philanthropy for her sorority at D-Phi-E. Since then, Laura has been a member of the Tomorrow's Leaders program, has spread awareness, volunteered for events, and raised thousands of dollars. This year, she will be honored as one of our finest honorees. Laura, we cannot thank you enough for the impact you have made and continue to make on the lives of people with CF and their families, as well as the many other causes you support. A special shout out, since she actually already raised $2,000 this past weekend for her finance campaign.
Next up is the Outstanding Corporate Partner Award. Dell Tech has supported 65 Roses Golf Classic for several years as the top sponsor. When we had to cancel the tournament, Dell Tech was ready to jump in and support another campaign and to ask others from the 65 Roses Classic to join as well. During a very trying year, the Dell Tech fam put forth the same effort and enthusiasm to ensure that the no-show gala was successful. Thank you, Dell Tech, for being an outstanding corporate partner.
Our next award is the Outstanding CF Advocate Award. In 2020, for the first time in nearly a decade, Katie Fielding decided to start a Great Strides team. Not for herself, but in an effort to raise funds to advocate research so all children and adults with CF can live healthier lives. She started her Great Strides team around the time she started her first dose of Trikafta and has shared her progress with her followers on social media to educate them on CF and raise funds for her team. In addition to Katie's heroic efforts fundraising on social media, she also used her platform to educate her followers on CF advocacy and is the advocacy captain for Virginia's District 8. As well, Katie is now a member of the Great Strides volunteer leadership team, is a facilitator for the Teen Connections program, and has worked on several BreatheCon and FamilyCon committees. Thank you, Katie, for all the ways in which you have continued to advocate for all people with cystic fibrosis.
The next award is the Innovate with Courage. Due to all the challenges in 2020, this individual, understandably, was unsure of how engaged she would be compared to years past. However, she kept an open mind, and after some time, she inspired chapter staff by regularly attending volunteer leadership team meetings, replying all on brainstorming email chains, registered for the CF Cycle for Life, and began to think outside the box. In a typical year, this individual would host several bake sales at her place of work, raising money for her cycle team. Without the in-person bake sales, she got creative and decided to sell masks to colleagues. If that weren't enough, she stepped outside her comfort zone to speak up during weekly virtual team meetings at work to share her story, share about Cycle and the CF Foundation. It was during these meetings that she would encourage colleagues to buy a mask, register for Cycle, or donate to her page. In a year with so much uncertainty and constant pivoting, she raised more money individually than ever before. Ellen Rogers, you are without a doubt an innovator with courage, and we congratulate you on your perseverance and resulting success. Thank you.
Since its inception, the Extreme Hike campaign has been led by these two outstanding individuals. Thanks to the leadership of Joe Mezzoli and Martin Miller, the campaign has continuously reached new heights both in fundraising and in hiking. This past year, the extreme decision was made to host an in-person, socially distanced hiking event. Joe and Martin's enthusiasm, guidance, and excitement has never wavered, and for that, we are beyond excited to present them with this year's Outstanding Leadership Award.
Our next award is the Metro D.C. Family of the Year. At the Metro D.C. chapter, we have the distinct honor of serving incredible CF families like the Oakley family. We are proud of the ways in which we can support this community by connecting them with CF programs like Compass and CFF Cares, and by advancing our mission through fundraising. However, we are more often humbled by the services that the Oakleys give back, whether it be accepting positions on the Metro D.C. board and CF Cycle for Life volunteer leadership team, fundraising for Great Strides and Cycle, emceeing events, co-hosting bi-weekly Spanish CFF Cares, or sharing inspirational quotes and photos for social media campaigns. The Oakleys raise their hand and follow through with any given opportunity. It is because of people like Will, Marcella, and little Isabella that we continue on our path to a cure with confidence. Thank you, Oakley family, for all that you do.
And this year's Volunteers of the Year award goes to the Schwab Bethesda team. This organization is always nearby to come over and volunteer and help raise awareness through our mission in any way that they can. For many years, this organization's employees have come in a group to volunteer on their company's volunteer day. They're always looking to give back and help the community. They are a shining example of what it means to help us find a cure for cystic fibrosis. Thank you.
Keeping sight of what really matters. As the largest high school fundraiser in the country, this 100+ student-led group has been essential to continuing our mission and inspiring the next generation of students to continue their great advocacy and fundraising work. With a history of an in-person event lasting 44 years, they unfortunately were not able to have their in-person dance this year due to the pandemic. With our amazement, they were still able to raise over $40,000 for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. The Keeping Sight of What Really Matters award embodies a person or group who doesn't let anyone or anything get in the way of their mission. The Super Dance Committee at the Bishop O'Connell High School is the perfect example of that. Congratulations.
Time and time again, we hear yes, or how can I help from this individual? In 2020, he worked to participate in as many virtual events as he could, kept fundraising momentum going in a virtual world, and contributed on a national level towards the mission of the foundation and to advocate for all of those living with CF. We are so fortunate to have this individual involved in our chapter and are always inspired by his willingness to help others and work to make a difference. Thank you, Chad, for being our 2020 CF star.
And thank you for everyone for joining us. It looks like, wait, I think we have one more award. It is called our Stronger Together Award. And this is for Ella Cooper and Michael Gallagher. And thank you two for not only being our fantastic new board members, but also for when your finance campaign was interrupted due to COVID-19, you guys flawlessly transitioned, kept everybody really engaged in the mission, and just continue to help out. As Henry Ford once said, and this is a Bridget quote for you guys, if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. Michael and Ella led with fortitude and inspired a handful of honorees to continue their fundraising. And thank you, Michael and Ella, for all you do. We are truly appreciative. And
thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Before we open it back up, we recently have ran a art contest, and we have several winners, and we wanted to showcase their art tonight. We have Sawyer, age 3, and Jack, age 6. And what we're going to be doing with the art is we are going to make it into cards that we'll be sending out to the community. We thought this was a great way to get the kids involved, get the community involved. And what we'd love to do is continue this. So please continue to send art to Metro D.C. so we can keep highlighting our CF fighters. And now I'm going to ask everybody, turn off your mute, turn on your cameras. Would love to answer questions, answers, and love to see everyone and chat with you.
Let's put it. Hey, congrats to everyone. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. So many wonderful faces here tonight. See the Oakley family, and it looks like the whole family's with us.
Where are they?
Chad and Julie, lots of pandemic beards popping up.
I actually had a point of order. Lisa and I were going back and forth arguing about whether we should turn our video off. And as a presenter, I hate looking at nobody out there. So we hung in there. We stayed. Dr. K, thank you. It was great to meet you virtually.
Wonderful presentations. Nice to see you as well, Dr. Sammy.
Thank you.
Carol,
thank you, everybody. Good to see you.
Trevor's hard at work.
Thank you.
Whipping that branch into shape.
Been a long day. Huh?
Hey, Brendan, did you wake up from a nap?
It's a great way to end a long day. So thanks everybody. I really appreciate doing bedtime, guys. These are fun. I enjoy it.
It's in person next year.
Yes.
Graham, can you say hi? Graham. All right, Levi, you need to get dressed. Otherwise, I'm showing everybody you naked.
Somebody turn off the video.
You gotta get dressed, bud.
Where's
It was
Carl?
great seeing everybody. Those are some awesome awards, and
Thanks for joining, Brendan.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Who do you
Liz,
have?
did I hear something about truffles?
Yeah.
Please?
They're in the freezer. I was packing them up while I was listening.
Do you have another bake sale coming up or?
Saturday.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you haven't had the opportunity, hopefully everybody someday has the opportunity to try Liz's baked goods.
This
They
seemed
are
like a
treat.
really good idea a couple weeks ago. I don't know about the weather, but we're going to give it a try anyway.
Well, thank you.
I think people
Thank you.
cross prairies filled with 20-foot snow to get to because I know I would if I was allowed to eat them.
Sure.
I want to thank Bridget for introducing me to a new quote from Henry Ford. I like it.
He has a surprising amount of quotable quotes. Go Ella and Michael for having fortitude.
Absolutely. I
Congratulations.
want to give the best background award to Michael Gallagher because he's conjuring up one of my favorite hotels in South Beach, the Delano. It's all white. I love it.
I'm in North Florida in Jacksonville, but close.
I didn't know it, but you got Florida vibe going.
Thank you. Good eye.
I was literally saying the same thing. I was like, where is Michael? That's a nice room.
We knew it wasn't your place, Mike.
Thank you. My girlfriend's bedroom. She's on the
Right?
apartment. Yeah.
I'll give Ella props for actually pronouncing D-Phi-E like a pro.
Oh, thanks. I was just so nervous. I think I just blacked out and don't even remember if I said anything right.
You got it great. Thank you both for hosting the awards.
Thank you all for inviting us to host. It's been fun.
I forgot to say congratulations, Ella and Michael. It's awesome, guys.
Thanks, Brendan.
Addie,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Addie, is your background Brewers Ball from?
It is because I'm
Oh, nice.
imagining that I am in the National Building Museum enjoying beer, but I am not.
I love it.
Where's the big cat? I miss the big cat.
Yeah.
Oh, I can make that happen. Hold on.
Just don't turn me into a cat.
There it
This is my version.
You need to get one with Nala's mouth open and that way it looks like she's eating your head.
I'm not a cat.
It's about as big as my cat gets when she's hungry.
Christmas kitty.
Katie, what is that donut?
My
donut.
Are you a real person?
I'm here. I'm live. I'm not a donut.
Judge, can you hear me? I'm not a donut.
Like you need another hole in your head.
Oh.
Katie, do you have a cat? I've been looking for that cat filter because I laughed for days.
No, that cat filter is from a 2007 Dell computer. That is like why that guy, didn't know how to use his his secretary's computer. But that donut was the Snapchat camera filter.
That Katie just knows how to work that stuff.
I want to see a flying toaster go across Carl's screen.
Maybe a flying drink.
Bye. Good night,
Bye,
guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good
See you
night.
soon.
Night, guys. We're gonna get to bed too.
Good night.
Right. Good to see you, Joe and Martin.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks
Good
for
night, everybody.
joining.
Good night.
John, nice to see you as well.
Good night, everybody. Thanks.
Good night, Dr.
Good
K.
night, Dr. K.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting.
Night all.
Good night, John.
Good night.
John.
Good night,
I
John.
feel like the Waltons.
I know. I was trying to work that index.
Now we all fit on one screen.
Or the Von Traps.
I think Mary and I just dated each other.
I was really, really little.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Right.
I was gonna say we're like the Von Traps. Adieu.
I was thinking Von Traps too.
And the captain just died.
I was going to say the traps are not complete anymore.
No.
Oh, I missed that. He just died?
Just died, but he was a
Yeah.
captain in the Von Traps. He was a general in the Star Trek movies. He got promoted, but you only had to move over to the Klingons.
He was in that other movie, Knives Out or whatever it was.
He was fantastic in that movie.
I didn't realize that was him.
Oh my God, yes.
No,
He's in, those are two
Awesome.
of my favorite movies. Some of my favorite movies, Sound of Music and Knives Out.
Star Trek 4.
And Die Hard.
And Die Hard. Yeah.
Bridget, we could probably end the night very quickly by singing one of the songs.
Oh, you guys, I'm going to stop recording.